friends, welcome back to another Rek'd Podcast. So sorry for the long delay. Shall we cheers?
Sure. As you can tell, we're in a new home.
Yeah.
So that's part of the reason it took us so long.
A big part.
Lots of back and forth moving from the old house to the new one, and
Then just unexpected things kept happening, and we would literally plan to record like almost every week, and then the day of or the day before something would happen, and so yeah. But hopefully we'll be back on a schedule now.
Yeah.
So for anyone following along, we are on day 71.
Week 11.
Week 11.
Of the Love Dare 365.
Yep.
And
I'm
I
sure
think your dailies are almost caught up.
I'm almost caught up.
You know, that's
we're in day
cool.
mid-60s. So.
Yeah.
Yep. So now we really have to post this every week because otherwise we're gonna
surpass it with the dailies.
Yes.
So,
day 71.
Yeah, I mean, this week certainly wrecked me, but I think we'll just start off, and like you said, day 71, love doesn't embarrass. 2 Corinthians, and it gives us 2 Corinthians 9:4.
For if any Macedonians should come with me and find you unprepared, we, not to mention you, would be embarrassed.
So, like I said, this week wrecked me because this is like the week of these are the things Lars sucks at. And I mean, this is one of those where there are so many things that you do that I think are super cute and I want to share with the whole wide world, but you are so embarrassed by them and you don't want the whole world to know. And so I will get caught up, I'll be like, let me tell you guys a funny story. And then you're like, I really wish you wouldn't have shared that story. And I can see how it would be embarrassing, or whatever at the time. And so that's one of the hardest things, like, for me, is because I don't see those things, like there are a lot of things that I don't see as embarrassing or whatever, but they are to you. And I need you to remember that, you're involved in that, which is weird to say, that's hard to remember, but that's kind of what I took from day 71's sort of thing. And I suppose that holds true too if I'm trying to look outside of just our relationship also. That holds true with your friends and family as well.
Yeah.
Because there may be a lot of things that you may tell your other friends about some of your friends, and then they meet them and they only know those stories, and how have you shaped sort of the picture of that person in a manner that is not befitting that person.
Yeah.
Whatever.
So some things from the book that stuck out to me, love is helping other people find success and not unease or shame or embarrassment. And, if you're making someone uncomfortable, that's not the goal of love. We should be trying to make them feel more confident and things like that.
Yeah.
And it can be dishonoring sometimes, depending on what you share. And I think, this goes a little bit farther of we want to be protecting our spouse's image to others.
Mm-hmm.
There's a difference between hiding things that are unhealthy and you need to seek help for, and hiding, the normal faults that we all have. I think it's really dishonoring to go to your friends and vent about all the frustrating things about your spouse. If they knew you were sharing those things, I'm sure they would feel embarrassed, dishonored, all those sorts of things, and we should be uplifting our spouse. And I feel like if we, share these things with our friends, we're focusing more on those. I know some people look at it as venting, but to me, the more you focus on those negative things, the more they're going to irritate you. And I don't think this is always the situation, but I often see friends venting to each other and no one's actually helping. Neither of them are really helping each other. They're just sitting there complaining about their husbands. And that's not how we're going to get healthy, successful relationships. And so that was kind of what I took from day 71.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I think that's like one of the things that's the hardest to figure out is what's the right like balance, right? Because sometimes you need perspective, and so you kind of need another viewpoint. But the problem is that all too often we're not
sharing the good things as well,
right? Or the people that we're sharing with aren't necessarily like mature. Not that they're not mature, but like they're not mature enough to separate themselves, that person, or hey, this person's trying to share this right now. Like it's really hard to find.
Or are they mature enough to even give you feedback that's helpful?
And I think that's where mentorship is really important, and finding somebody who can do that. The biggest problem is like oftentimes the people that we might trust or have that might want to look for that mentorship, it's like family members or whatever, they're going to have a bias. And so trying to find somebody who's like a third party completely and doesn't have that bias necessarily, but also is mature enough to understand when you're venting to either correct you if it's like going in the wrong direction, or to help you have like a different perspective, I think is really important. And I think that's one of the things that's sort of like why church is important, right? So that you can do that. And maybe why a lot of people struggle nowadays to even sort of find success is we're made to be so independent that our groups are just our friends or just our family. You know what I mean? And it's really hard to find that mentor that's going to be completely objective in that situation. And so I don't know, that I guess just move on to day 72.
I was going to do the dare for this week.
Oh, okay. I talked about that in 73, but yeah, sure.
So the dare for this week is ask your spouse to tell you 3 things that cause him or her irritation, and do so without attacking them or justifying your behavior. This is from their perspective only.
Yeah, I mean that one's kind of hard to do, right? Like this dare is not necessarily easy because you have to be, you can't let the spirit of offense come in when you're listening, and then when you are giving out, you also have to open up and kind of be, vulnerable about, hey, I really hope you don't get mad at me about this or whatever, but this is something that bothers me. And I mean, I feel like we've been through this week a couple times, which is kind of funny, but every time we've done something like this where we're picking 3 things, it's always kind of hard for us. And I think it's because of that combination of things, right? Like, well, it's not really that big of a deal, so maybe I shouldn't say that or whatever, but trying to find those things and trying to be objective is kind of hard.
We also, I feel like, usually when the irritating thing happens, talk about it. Like, I feel like we're pretty good at saying, hey, can you not do that? Or will you do this, please, instead?
Yeah.
So that helps.
So day 72, love minds its manners. It gives us Ezra 6:9.
Whatever is needed, let it be given to them every day without fail.
And then all I wrote down for this, so shows how focused I was apparently on this day, but was Matthew 5:38 through 42. And Matthew 5:42 is actually day 73's day as well. So I just kind of combined them, but
okay.
I want to hear what you had to think and what you had to say.
So day 72 pointed out, when we have guests over and things like that, we bend over backwards, bust our butts to make sure they're comfortable and have everything they need. But we don't do that for our spouse or our family if we've been living with them for a while. Mm-hmm. And there should be no difference. We should be wanting to make our spouse and family comfortable and bending over backwards for each other to help each other. And it's hard if you only have one person doing that, which I feel like is usually a common complaint I hear from other couples is, well, so-and-so's not doing anything, so why should I? But, I will say when you do something extra to help out, I want to do something extra for you too, and hopefully that will be the situation. And it's not always going to be that way, but sometimes it takes a little sacrifice and extra giving on your end, and it may take a while, but hopefully eventually you'll see that reciprocated to you.
Yeah, so that's almost why I combine it with day 73, because kind of what I feel like you're talking about with, that reciprocation, that sort of karmic cycle or whatever you want to call it, right? Day 73 talks about that, which love honors requests, mm-hmm. right? And
want me to read the verse real quick?
Yeah, please.
The verse is Matthew 5:42, and it says, "Give to the one who asks you, and don't turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you."
So the book kind of just breaks down and says, hey, do something without any hesitation or agenda, right? Just do it. You can't have an agenda. And I feel like that's something that I hear a lot of complaints about, in our friend groups and, in relationships in general, right? Which is I'm doing all of these things, this person's not doing anything, or I bust my butt at work, and then I come home and it's not this way, right? And that person's not working or whatever, right? And all these different things. And I think, I've certainly heard a lot of my male friends, and some of that's there's a whole relationship here, just over the past decade plus, right, where they bust their butt or whatever at work. They're really used to being highly respected, they're used to that very good hierarchy system, and then they get home and it's not like that, right? You're in a completely new hierarchy, you're in a completely new system, and it's hard to understand that as much as you are putting in effort, they're putting in effort so that you can put in that effort, right? And it's really easy to forget that, especially when you're in a super high stress environment or whatever, and then you come home and it's a totally different world, right? And all of the things that one member of the family has been dealing with all this time, those didn't stop just because you weren't there or whatever, because you were at work and you were working your 9-to-5 job or whatever, right? Or, you're working the farm freaking from sun up to sundown, you get home and you're I just want to come to a clean house and, a nice dinner or whatever. But guess what? The wife may have been doing something all day too, right? And dealing with all the things that happened there. And who knows, the kids are total chaos, mm-hmm. having problems, being sick or whatever. And you have to remember that everybody's doing their part, and you have to really try to find, you go, you know what, this is what I guess what I tell myself all the time in this perspective is, this is what I really wish somebody would, this is what I would want. If I were in their shoes, I would want me to do this. So let me just go do it, right? And I'll admit, sometimes that doesn't come right away. You've expressed sometimes, or I'll be I guess, because I'll just, and I'm totally willing to do it, but my attitude doesn't come across, you're oh.
The book literally talks about that.
But like I said, this week was my get rep week, right? Because you'll be like, hey, you're like, never mind, I'll just do it. And I'm like, no, I'll do it. And I really don't have a problem doing it. Like, I just have to put myself away for a second, and like, I'm not super good at that immediately. Or, I've told you about moments in my life where I've literally just stared somebody down for a second because I'm thinking about all the things that I want to say, or that I like feel like I should do. And I go, nope. The right, like, godly thing, or the thing that I should do as a good leader, or whatever, is just okay. Go and do it, or whatever.
Yeah. The book also really encourages to just be straightforward and say what you want or what you need, so that there's no guessing, and hopefully your spouse will respond kindly and help meet those needs. The book says, and yet our human natures often respond negatively to such appeals. We may go along, but let them know it's a real effort, something we expect to be reciprocated. And sometimes being on the other end of being shown that it's a real effort, it makes it almost like frustrating. And so yeah, like you said, my response then is, okay, I'm just going to do it then, because I don't want to hear how much of an effort it is, or like, if it's that much of an effort, then I'm just going to do it because I don't care that much,
And I think there's some communication. Whoops, sorry. I think there's probably some like communication stuff there too, right? Where we have to be careful with how we sort of present things in some ways, right? Because there are definitely times where, like, tone or whatever will portray one thing, and you're like, it's really not that big of a deal to me, or whatever. But the way your tone came out, the way you handled it, wasn't necessarily the way that, made it uncomfortable, or made it just like, okay, I don't want to deal with this person feeling like that, or whatever. And I think in our relationships, like in our marriages, it is so much easier to let those things show, and we wouldn't do that at work. Right. When our boss like tells us to do some crap, and we're like,
we wouldn't do that with our friends, or even strangers. Like, a stranger asks you for help or to whatever, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I can help you with that, no problem, man, and whatever. So it's like, so why with the person we love most do we get all...
That's the resistance, right? Like, I think that it's a good thing if you can do it without doing it, right? Without like the negative parts of it, right? And the resistance doesn't want you to have that relationship that's going to help you to continue to grow towards God, right? So I think that's why, and then that comes back to like this week's dare, right? And sharing the 3 things with one another and being open about it and just sort of accepting it. Like, one of the hardest things sometimes, Ray was doing her daily yesterday, actually, so kind of funny, and I was out here and I'm like talking to the dog, and she can hear him, she's like, you're in my video because you're so freaking loud. And she didn't say it like that, but she's like, hey, I'm doing my daily. And I responded, I was like, oh, come on, just go somewhere else. And like, but in reality, that was my initial response, which is just me being like defensive, but in reality, I know, I can just not talk. I don't know why, And
I literally had already removed myself to another room with the door shut. So like, okay, let me just go another room.
But it's so funny because like, I actually don't care. Like, just the initial response, right, was to be defensive. And like, but in reality, like in the moment I said it, and you're like, okay, I'll go to, you're like, I'm already in another room or whatever. And I was like, why did I even say that? Because I don't care. I'll just be quiet. It's not a big deal. But because of my response, like automatically she's like, well, I don't want to be a hassle, So it's just funny how sometimes we can respond with that sort of like spirit of offense or whatever, and not even really feel it, or like care that much. You know what I mean? It's just like this really easy, quick response that for whatever reason, it's so much easier to give that quick response with our spouse.
Yeah.
You know?
P.S. The faces and the blinking, my contacts are just bothering me. So I'm over here like.
No, she's really pissed. She's super angry.
That's me. Alright. Speaking of that, day 74,
Yeah.
love is not irritable.
Good
Proverbs
translation, babe.
16:32. Patience is better than power, and controlling one's temper can. Oh, wait, let me start that over. Patience is better than power, and controlling one's temper than capturing a city. So, this one applied more to me, I feel like, because.
No, I think it's. Anyway, go ahead.
Well,
I think we both have.
Being a woman and the hormones that come monthly, you know, I do experience that irritableness where I'm like, I just feel on edge, and like any little thing is like, you know, frustrating, even though it's really not. And sometimes that can be hard when it's like a hormonal thing, but I still feel like it's not an excuse to be rude and snappy, and you know, so it's something to just be conscious and aware of. And when I feel that way, I try to just pray to God all throughout the day when, you know, something happens and I'm like, Lord, you know, help me deal with this, help me get through it. I know this is no big deal. Like, I give these feelings to you, and, you know, so it's a constant, every single month thing to try and work through and get better at. But I feel like I've been doing a little bit better.
Well, I think you're better at that than me, right? Like the giving it up to God kind of thing. Because I think I have like, I think the difference is maybe I just have, you know, more stamina in that regard. But then when I'm done, like, I have a problem. You know what I mean? Like just the other day, I just been so drained from the past couple months, just all the little things going on, that I was so drained, I was totally out, and no reason for me to be irritated. I mean, I was getting irritated over stupid things, like the song that I want's not coming on, or whatever that, you know, day, and then culminating in me, like, having a really bad attitude and not treating you right.
Can I fix your thing?
Did I knock it out? Or?
It's just like barely hanging on. Okay. And it was pointing like in your chest. So, anywho.
But, you know, so I think we all get this, right? And it's just a difference in like what triggers it or whatever. I mean, there was a period of time where I was pretty sick, you know, and like I was pretty moody or whatever, same sort of thing, like very hormone based, right? In some ways I think that's good because I kind of understand your perspective, right? As a dude, we don't really often understand like the hormone imbalancing. We're like, really? Come on, it can't be that bad because we're so used to sort of being a level or whatever. But, you know, yeah, it's annoying and frustrating, and it makes you more annoyed because
you're annoyed at yourself. You're like, can I just not feel this way? Like, I know in my brain this is not annoying, this is not frustrating, so why do I feel frustrated? And so you get more irritated because you can't control the hormones, and so you're just stuck like feeling that way, and it is very frustrating.
I think, like, you know, so then it gives us the prayer for that day, right? So maybe, you know, something for all of us to think about when we're...
Yeah. So it says, Heavenly Father, help me to be someone who is so mature and secure that I am hard to offend and quick to forgive. Bring my emotions and moods under your loving control. In Jesus' name, amen. I actually really like that one.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like most of the prayers in this book are ones you should probably keep, you know, handy or whatever. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of them though, so you'll probably forget. But certainly, I think this one's really important. Maybe that's just because that's us, and you know, that's where at least I struggle or whatever. But I think that's a great one, and keep it in your toolbox.
Yeah. To 75?
Yep, which leads us to love shows restraint, which is sort of the next step, right? Don't be irritable. So how do you not do that? You show restraint. It gives us Proverbs 17:27.
The intelligent person restrains his words, and one who keeps a cool head is a man of understanding.
So, key phrase from this day to me. Rage and violence are always out of the question when it comes to love. And I think that certainly fits, especially when you, the way I like to look at, the whole love-hate thing with the original Hebrew words and choosing, if you're choosing someone, rage and violence is never the answer, right? That's left to hatred, right? That's left to not choosing.
Yeah.
And I think if you look at it from that perspective, because I think oftentimes what we can do is we say, oh, I love this thing so much that my rage is acceptable, right? Or
yeah, it makes me feel so passionate, and passion can be split into so many different emotions that can be negative too.
But I think that perspective, right, rage, that kind of rage, what you should be thinking about is not the love perspective. That's not love. That's because you're not choosing that thing, right? That's not choosing whatever it is you are raging at, right? So whatever this thing is that's setting you off, or maybe harming the thing that you do love, right, that does require violence or rage in that moment to sort of correct it, right, to protect the thing you love, you're not choosing that other thing, right? And so I think when I look at it from that perspective, I feel a lot more comfortable with it, right? Because when people used to say that before, and my lacking of understanding of, the original Hebrew terms for love and hate, I would have had a really hard time with that day and sort of, what the book says about that, because I know how important, or my perspective is, and I could just be immature and juvenile in that way, but sometimes violence is the only way, or sometimes rage is the only way to protect those things that we care about when somebody else is being that way, right? When somebody else is presenting violence, or somebody else is presenting rage. Sometimes you just have to stop it. You have to meet it, right? And if you don't, then you're just going to lose all those things. And I guess you could argue that, we're talking about worldly stuff here. But I think, an ideal, right, would be that we just love things and we love people and we handle it, through kindness and peace and joy and whatever. But sadly, I'm not perfect and I'm not there yet. And I guess even Jesus, right, steps into the temple, sees that they're using it for prostitution and selling things, and starts flipping tables and whipping at people, no, get out, you're not, that's sort of a righteous rage, right? Because he's not choosing those things. He hates those things, and he loves God, and he loves the temple, and he doesn't want people being pulled away from God because of all those things, like gambling and so on and so forth in the temple. And so I think that's sort of a good way to look at it, I suppose. Whatever. I don't know, what are your thoughts? Sorry, I've been talking about it a lot.
I liked how it pointed out kind of what a husband and wife should look like. A husband is calm, patient, shows mercy, restraining his temper, and a wife is not overly sensitive, cranky, or and does use emotional self-control. Not that these are all things that encompass what a husband and wife is, but from the perspective of this day, you know.
Well, and I think that, like, you know, again, that's why this week wrecked me a little bit. It's because, you know, I did lose my temper or whatever at one point, and I don't want to, right? And that was both, you know, that, but helps me redirect and, okay, next time, hopefully that won't happen, right, or whatever. So then day 76, love lowers stress, which I guess is the next step when we're showing a ton of restraint, when we're not, you know, being irritable, all of these things, our stress levels probably increase, and then love helps us lose that, and so it gives us Psalm 37:8.
Refrain from anger and give up your rage. Do not be agitated. It can only bring more harm. I liked this day because it was a good reminder for me of making sure that I do the things that help take away my stress. I'm a really active person, and you know, that's one of the main ways that I keep my stress and irritability in check. And you know, if we're keeping our stress levels low, then hopefully the irritability.
I was making sure we're still recording.
Okay.
Yeah, because, you know, I don't know, we haven't done anything with it for a while. I want to make sure we weren't running out of time.
Yeah. But that's how we can try and keep our irritability low. And so finding out what things you can do to help reduce your stress, whether that's going outside, you know, another thing for me is trying to have a tidy house. If my house is getting messy and sloppy, I feel a lot more stressed. And so taking that extra 10 minutes of tidying in the evening just makes you feel so much better. So anywho, taking the time to figure out what works for you to reduce your stress is going to be really beneficial.
Well, I think, you know, Jordan Peterson says, like, he actually talks about have one beautiful room in your house, right? That's one of his rules, is have one beautiful room in your house. And that makes so much sense to me from the perspective of, like, there are rooms in this house right now because we're still moving in and setting stuff up. I just don't want to go in.
Yeah.
You know, like, every time I think about those rooms, I'm like, man, I need to do something there, but I don't want to go in there right now. And if you feel that way about your whole house, you're screwed. Like, you're just going to be living your whole life in, you know, a really uncomfortable situation. And so having that one space, I think, you know, kind of the way you just brought it up, how it lowers your stress. I think that's why a tidy house, a disciplined, like, you know, control of your environment makes for a big difference in your day-to-day, you know, stress level.
Yeah.
I wrote down read the reasons. I think there's like a little section there that kind of gives, maybe I can read it real quick and I'll remember.
While you're
So it gives reasons for stress, basically. You know, it says stress weighs you down, drains your energy, and weakens your health. There are relational causes for stress: arguing, division, and bitterness. There are excessive causes for overworking, overplaying, and overspending.
Yeah.
There are even deficiencies that bring it on: lack of rest, nutrition, or exercise. And then says, oftentimes we inflict these daggers on ourselves, and this sets us up to be irritable before anyone else is involved at all. And I think that is so true, and we forget so often what that means, right? When we start pulling ourselves in multiple directions, like, I think that's one of the biggest problems with, you know, sort of my groups of people, right, or the groups of people that we've, you know, been around and whatever, is you get pulled, there are two separate worlds that you're being pulled into, right? And you want to be good at both. And they're both full-time jobs, right? And when I say full-time jobs, I mean 24/7 jobs. You know, like, there's no moment you get to actually be off. And I think you really got to figure out how to do that. Where you're, and I think that's also why, like, the Bible, and, you know, we're told, like, hey, your whole life needs to be about God, right? Because once you do that, then you're just dedicating your life in that direction, and all the little things, like the day-to-day, your job, whatever, those just handle themselves, right? And I mean, we've seen that over and over. The number of blessings we've had when we're pointing in the right direction, and we're not like over focused towards
life,
the business or life or whatever. When we are focused on God, all of a sudden we're like, holy crap, that just fell into place. Never thought that would happen. Like buying this house, for example. You know, I mean, the odds of what happened for us to buy this home are, I don't think very many people would have thought it could have happened. Mm-hmm. Right? And it's been a bigger blessing than I ever could have imagined. So we got to kind of think about that and find ways that we can mitigate some of those reasons. And then we get day 77, the last day of the week. So I have no idea how long we've been going. Hopefully not too long. But love cultivates kindness. And it gives us Matthew 12:34.
The mouth speaks from the overflow of the heart. Right off the bat, that verse, like that tells you why you can't harbor things and why you can't not communicate with your spouse. Like you have got to, you don't have to say it immediately, but like you can't let it fester because it's going to be trapped in there. Eventually, it's going to turn into some sort of outburst or, you know, that's why communication is just so important.
Yeah.
I didn't write that down, but reading that, it just was like...
Yeah, I kind of laughed because it talks about some people give lemons and some people give peaches or something
or like
that.
Yeah, so like when life squeezes you, does your juice come out like a lemon, all sour and tart, or does it come out like peach juice? Are you still sweet and pleasant?
That cracked me up because I'm just thinking about certain people, you know, in our lives or whatever, and just how some of them are just salty, sour individuals, and some of them are, you know, like sweet and kind in those moments. And just cracks me up.
I think it's more common for people to be the lemon. Like it takes a lot of effort.
Well, look, lemonade's great. I like lemon in my water. So sometimes you need a little bit of sour in your life.
Yeah, but...
And it's also just sort of, you know, I'm so used to that salty world too that I think it's just kind of funny. Mm-hmm. And
I'm trying to be the peach. I want to be the peach.
No, I totally understand.
Which I am definitely a lemon at times, no doubt.
No, I think we all are, right? Like sometimes we're good, sometimes we're bad. Or whatever.
I want to be the peach majority of the time. Like I want, you know, because when you try and you work on being the peach, another t-shirt idea, be the peach.
These things are going to be used. Flex your love muscle, be the peach. Like, why do they all have to be semi-sexual?
That's your brain. Oh. Sorry.
There's going to be a quick pause here, probably, in an edit.
Sigurd. These are our alarms for the driveway. I'm probably just going to leave this in here. Sigurd, come here. So, anywho, though, being the peach, it does take effort and, you know, self-control in that moment, and you may not feel like a peach on the inside, but it... Sigurd, come.
Come here, buddy.
No, come here.
I know there's somebody here.
Okay, sit. No, sit. But the more you practice it, though, the better you'll get at it. And honestly, though, you know, how many times do we hear about, it's not about like the situation, it's about how you react to it, you know? And that's what this is all.
And it reminds me of false motivation is still motivation, right? If you're kind, right, and you're showing kindness and peace and whatever in situations where it doesn't matter what you had inside, right? There's so many times the things that we think are not good things, right? but what we put into the world is so much more important, right? That's why like the whole mouth and heart conversation, right? That piece is important because what ends up coming out of your mouth is much more important than what was in your head.
Yeah.
Right? Because you'll create that habit, one, like you were saying, so flex the muscle kind of thing. But then it also it can solve so many issues or keep issues from ever arising, right? That would have created that negative situation that was in your head to begin with.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
read the questions.
So I had a couple more things that I wanted to say before we got to the questions because I figured we could
We're
sort of
gonna
leave
hear
off
some
with those.
dings again.
One of the things that this day said that I thought was, eye-opening, especially because we keep thinking about this from, our friends and family perspective and stuff like that, and we've been kind of talking about it a lot, is, good boy, he's sitting under the table right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay, buddy.
No. Okay, go lay down.
It talks about prioritizing family instead of sacrificing them for work.
Down. Yeah.
And, like I was saying earlier, talking about some of the earlier days and lowering your stress and pulling yourself in two different directions, right? I think there is something really unique. I guess one of the things that surprises me or that I think about a lot is a lot of our cultures and a lot of, especially like in the Christian world, right? Whatever your faith base may be or whatever, we talk about how important family is, sometimes to like an extreme, and yet we still are doing things that sacrifice our family and then we make these excuses as to why, right? Like, oh, well, it'll help me make more money, right? If I do this, then I can finally start spending time with my kids, right? Because I'll have so much money that I can now take my kids to do these things or whatever, or I can take my wife to do these things. Our dog is blowing it up. So anyway, but like, how much time did you lose? And how much time did you throw away? And kids grow quick, right? You'll never get that time back where they took their first steps. You know what I mean? Or, whoa, oh my gosh, I can barely breathe. Anyway.
Easy, your butt stinks, dude.
As he wags his tail. But, like, you just sacrificed all that time. And what could you have accomplished otherwise, right? Because you don't know if that's ever going to come back. You don't know if you're actually going to make those, like, gains that you think you're going to gain, right? Oh, one day I'll be the CEO of this company or something, right? You have no idea if that's ever going to happen. You know right now that your son, daughter, whatever is, your wife is right there, right? And you could have that time together. I'm not saying be irresponsible, right? And, don't work at all. But I think, like, it's so interesting to me how we still struggle so much to find those things like that balance, right? And prioritizing family properly over sacrificing others for work. And then the last thing was I recently started learning about sort of the concept of organized thinking. And it's that emotions without context and emotion, like not controlling your thought process around your emotions, is disorganized thinking, letting your emotions control it. And the day 77 sort of relates to that in that organized thinking is the most important thing you can do, which is take those emotions, take your thinking, take the objective information that you have, and then run forward. Like that's the only way to, you have to organize all of that into place, and that's how you find the right answers or the right direction. And that's how you cultivate kindness, right? Is my emotion right now is that I'm very upset with you, right? Like, but I need to put all these things together, and that will point me in the direction of love, right? And point me in the direction of like kindness. So I had probably the most thoughts on day 77, but I think since you kind of said, I'm not misunderstanding that you were kind of done with your thoughts on day 77.
I just have one more line that I liked.
Okay.
It said, "Don't follow your heart, lead your heart."
That's the part that I was thinking about, organized thinking, right?
Yeah.
Like, is exactly that. Like, your heart, your feelings may point you in a bad direction. You need to organize those feelings, organize those thoughts around it, and figure it out.
Yeah.
Right.
So on to the questions. Jesus said that your words reveal what's in your heart. What are some of the other things that reveal what is going on inside your heart? How do your attitudes, actions, and longings reveal where you are? So, some things to ponder.
Well, I think that's, so those questions are huge to me though, and sort of get, like, summarize what we've been talking about, right? Sorry, excuse me. That was a weird burp.
It's just been full of...
Yeah. But the organized thinking concept and like your words reveal what's in your heart. You may think, I'm really angry right now. But if you stop yourself and you say the kind thing instead, that's the reality, right? It doesn't matter that you were upset. What you said, the things that came out are the reality because you cared enough, that you showed enough love, right? You loved enough to change sort of that initial push into something kind.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think a lot of people get caught up in this weird thing of, subconscious bigotry or whatever. If you're not actually actively doing it, then you're not really that way. Right? You know what I mean? And I think we need to accept that and understand like how important our actions and words are, more so than
Our feelings.
our feelings. Yeah, exactly.
Well, thanks for watching. So sorry that it's been so long since we posted a longer video, but hopefully this will be starting on a new track and be able to be uploading more regularly.
We also have super fast internet now, though. So once you're done editing, it'll upload quick.
Yeah, versus
so maybe you
before it
guys
took like 3 days.
Yeah. So maybe you guys will be able to get this by Thanksgiving, and whatever, if you're seeing this on Thanksgiving or after, just know.
We hope you have a blessed day.
Yeah. Hope whatever it is, you're able to find something to be thankful for, and we're thankful for you. So
Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.
make it a good one.